Welcome back to another episode of Positively Uncensored, your favorite reality TV and interview podcast. I am here with one of my listeners' favorite guests, Janae Tipton.
What compliment?
You are. I get tons of compliments about our episodes.
I don't know if I'm their favorite. And
A
maybe,
favorite.
maybe, okay, a favorite. That is such a compliment. Thank you so much. I
And
cannot
listen,
next
to be
week.
a favorite is a big deal too, because I think that there's a few guests that I have people ask to come back on. And I think there's only really three of them. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I would, I would like to thank the Academy and everyone that requests me to come back.
I would like to thank God for putting you in my life. I would like to thank God for bringing us together, making us friends, and then giving me the ability to talk to a marriage and family therapist on my podcast. Also, get your opinions. It's great to be friends with a marriage and family therapist. I don't know what people are talking about with the idea that, like, if you're friends with therapists, that they always try to therapy speak you.
Oh
I
my
don't
God.
feel that way at all.
Do not at all. I don't want to either. I don't get paid to therapy speak to you outside of sessions. Thanks so much. Not gonna do it.
Exactly. And it's conflict of interest to take me in a session. So we're like,
Hello.
that's just simply not where we go.
Hello. I think one of these days for your podcast, we're gonna have to tell the story about how we met, Leah.
Yes. Wait, how did we meet, Janae?
I told the story to all of my friends. We met on TikTok.
Oh, yes.
I
Okay.
followed you last year when you were reporting on Love Island. And I just started leaving comments under your posts, and you were really interactive. And then I think we started to DM each other. And you were like, we should be friends on Instagram. And I was like, yes. And then we started DMing each other on Instagram. And we go, we should exchange numbers. And that is where we're at.
Okay, thank you for the reminder because I knew we met virtually, but I didn't know if we were about to try and spin it to people and act like we hadn't. And I was like game for whatever we were about was about to come out of your mouth. I was
The
okay,
truth
yeah.
is best.
But yes, we met virtually and it's so funny because I'm cautious about like who I become friends with and exchange numbers with. It makes me very
Yeah.
nervous to share my number online. So I remember that when if I see someone's comments enough, and especially when I first started creating, because a year ago I was in a different space with like as many followers as I have now. And so it was easier for me to like be in my comments without feeling a sense of
Yeah.
anxiety that I can't respond to everyone. So I was like, oh my God, every video, I love what she's saying. I love what she's saying. And then I was like, you know what? I had already learned that sometimes who I thought I was communicating with when I would see them on socials was not. And so I was like, you know
Yes.
what? Friends that I actually want to be friends with, let me follow each other on social media so that they can know me, I can know them. And
Mhm.
then if we like each other from there, then we will move on and exchange numbers. And I've
Yes.
I've loved you every step of the way.
Same.
Okay, well, you guys got that for bonus because I forgot. You're
Let's
welcome.
get mush. Let's get to the drama.
Yeah, we're getting to the drama. We are talking about the Valley. What we are going to do, in case you missed our last episode, we recapped the Valley. We said we were going to skip episode 4 of the Valley because really not much happened. Since then, 2 episodes have dropped. There's also been 2 separate episodes on the Viall files with Michelle, also with Janet. We are going to briefly comment on that. Janae hasn't really seen either in full. So I'm merely going to ask her a few questions, but nothing was revealed on these podcast episodes that we don't see on TV. Obviously, the questions are just pertaining about things that we've watched.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so starting with Michelle's interview, the only thing that I wanted to get your well, there was tons of things that were interesting, just adding context to their relationship. Learning about how Jesse didn't start having like a substance abuse problem until after he had Isabella, I personally found interesting upon further research. I guess that that's something that it can be common with men is like I don't know how to describe it, but it almost like after they have children while their wives are in such vulnerable places, they become abusive or they shift their priorities and responsibilities. So hearing her say that it was after Isabella was born that he befriended Jax. It was after she was born that he started to do allegedly cocaine and drinking a lot. And so I'm like, that's so opposite to what you would picture a new father thinking their responsibilities would be. But I'm hearing it's more common. I'm curious what you think.
So it's really important to note that every phase of your life, every step of your life is a new phase. And we talk about this in therapy, you will go through multiple changes in your life in multiple stages. So you'll have the stage when you're single, and then you'll have the stage when you're a couple, and then you'll have the stage if you choose to get married, and then you enter in a whole new stage when you have children. You enter in a new stage when your children go to high school, and you enter another huge shift when your children transition out of the home, and then when you enter another shift when they start to have children. So every step of your life is a brand new change. It brings about brand new challenges. That's something that I discuss with my families in family therapy. It's about adjusting. So think about it, if your wife is pregnant, she's spending that time carrying the baby, having a very real sense of this human is coming into the world and I will have to care for it. It can almost feel like a disjointed connection for your spouse or your partner or whoever you're having this child with, because they're not having the same type of connection as you are. It is truly outer body for them. They don't feel the kicks. They don't feel the flutters. They don't feel the pressures of having to give birth. They don't understand that the baby is going to naturally go to the mother first because the mother is the one feeding the child, especially if you're breastfeeding. That is a one-to-one connection that fathers do not have the opportunity to experience. So he's experiencing an entirely new shift in his world, even though he didn't give birth. And it can be scary for men that are experiencing a new shift when their body isn't even like preparing them for this shift. Like they, one minute they're supporting their spouse, the next minute you have a baby. That can be a lot of stress. There can be postpartum that men experience as well. It will not be on the same level as a woman for the mere fact that he's not having the same experience with the baby as well. So that can be triggering. You're entering into an entirely different space in your life, and you might not know what that really means and what your role is in that. And that can be triggering. So it makes sense that he went to alcohol or substance abuse as a part of his postpartum journey as well.
It's interesting because it almost sounds like that has the capacity for men certain men to develop like a chip on their shoulders and almost like a resentment towards their wife. And all the while, their wife is bearing the burden of carrying their child. You know what I mean? So it's almost
Yeah.
like this counterintuitive response to feel like you're missing out on something. And then the person who gets to experience that like may become the subject of your resentment. Um,
Yeah. And
one
that's very real. But it's also important to know that even though men don't experience pregnancy, motherhood, they still experience that change. They still experience that shift. How it shows up is absolutely dependent on how they're managing that stress, how they're managing this an upcoming and impending change, and understanding like what you're going to be able to provide for your child in the beginning versus what is going to be solely on the mother, just for out of anatomy. Again, breastfeeding is a good example of that. That's not something that he would ever be able to do, and that is a bonding experience that is very different for women to experience versus a man bottle feeding, right? So even though it's not fair to feel as though you're having all these changes but you didn't go through like a full physical change, it is still a mental change which can be very scary, and it's a very real thing that a lot of people suffer with. And it really depends on like the support that you receive from your spouse and the support that you are like preparing for. How prepared are you for fatherhood in this next transitional change in your life?
just to point out the other side so it doesn't sound like we're excusing Jesse's behaviors as well. I'm curious if you feel that how men respond to these changes in their lives can also be revealing of the level of respect that they have towards women in general, towards their wife, or like certain boundaries that they will and won't cross. And like in that essence, I guess I don't mean him turning to substance abuse for those feelings of anxiety. More what I mean is like it from her retelling on the Viall files, Jesse sounds like consistently he was very abusive. Like
Mhm.
it sounds like he degraded her during her pregnancy, he called her fat. It sounds like he was the one who decided that she should have a natural birth plan. It was his preference that they don't have any doctors, they don't have a doula, they don't have anybody besides the two of them deliver at home.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, he was the one who wanted her to breastfeed because he felt like that was important for Isabella. And so I just wonder if there's this avenue where men who are already controlling perhaps become ultra controlling
Mhm.
during these vulnerable moments that are supposed to be shared together in like a safe space.
Anytime you get someone who is controlling, wants to exert their control and put them in a situation that is uncontrollable, you're going to see that come out. It's a child. You can't control anything about a child. And oftentimes you can't control the type of birth that you have. You can state the type of birth that you have, but if any complications come up, if there are any changes in the birth plan, sometimes that makes you a little out of control as well. So I think he was prepping up to hit the best of his ability to try to be in control of an uncontrollable situation, which shows after you have the child. I also say that the people that you hang around, your community makes a really big difference as well. Now, he might not have been friends with Jax until after Michelle gave birth, but who was he hanging around with before? What was his image of fatherhood? What has been his image of being a husband as well? Did that set the tone for their relationship? And then you add on having some shitty friends who are not doing that great in fatherhood as well, and who will condone how you act and kind of be passive in the way that you're treating your wife. That all plays a role in that as well.
That's so interesting because Nick Viall did, in fact, ask Michelle, like, what did you feel like Jesse's perception was for his role as a father? I was trying to look for notes to that, but just to keep things moving so that we can continue on. The next thing that I had noted is Michelle really wanted to sort of make it clear that because she had the lived experience of being with Jesse, she
Mhm.
didn't feel like people using his substance abuse issues as the reason for his erratic behaviors or abusive behaviors that he was pointing towards her. And she said that basically she believed that his ego was bruised.
Mhm.
He truly felt like he could not, like, she, first of all, she would never leave him because she had
Mhm.
threatened to leave him before and he had convinced her to stay. And second of all, he wanted to have the appearance of the perfect family, which now he had. And so it made him resent Michelle for her to want to leave him.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, I'm curious what you think about that because she also says that he hadn't touched her and or desired her for 2 years prior. Like she went through 2 years of no compliments, no intimacy, no kissing, to the point where when Isabella was born and Jesse would come over to try to hug Michelle, it was so out of the norm that Isabella would run over to Michelle and attempt to protect her or get in the middle of them because she didn't know that he was
Mhm.
expressing affection.
And what was your question about this? I'm
My
sorry.
question about this is, do you feel like it's that there's any weight to what she's saying in the fact that it could be a bruised ego, or it could be the fact that he never even truly loved her? He wanted the idea of a perfect family versus the substance abuse caused his bad behavior.
Yeah, no, the substance abuse did not cause his bad behavior. It's almost the same as someone saying like alcohol brings out your truth.
Mm.
Substance abuse exasperates things that you may have kept in your subconscious and that you try to push down day to day. So I would not use substance abuse as the excuse for his behavior. I think it exasperated his behavior. He might have done things more out of character under substance abuse, but did that make him Mr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? No. He's the same person that he is. What I will say is these things change you. Again, you're going through different phases of your life. You're going to change, you're going to evolve. What I always stress to people who are single or going into as couples going into marriage is you really have to ask what is your vision for your life? What do you envision your role being? What do you envision my role being? Here's what I envision my role being. Here's how I envision you showing up. And not having those clear communications and those clear set of our roles, our boundaries, our rules for our household will always come back around to bite you in the ass. So whether he had this image once she got pregnant and decided in his head, this is how I want it to be. This is how I want to show up. This is what her role is. This is what my role is. Boom. Did he communicate that with her? But did she do the same as well? Did she set her expectations? But no, the substance abuse did not make him into a bad person. It exasperated his bad qualities. It put them on Front Street. Now
I
you have to deal with it.
That's really all I wanted to ask you about the episode. I appreciate your insight. Those are the things that I was most curious about
Mhm.
because I felt like that pretty much summarizes the crux of what she was saying in the
Yeah.
episode. Now, let's get into the Valley season 2, episode 5. The episode starts with Jasmine and Brittany arguing with Nia. All parties are seemingly intoxicated.
Mhm.
Um, I want to point this out, except for, and seemingly except for Nia. And I don't think we've seen Nia drink. I don't think we've ever seen her intoxicated. And
Mhm.
part of me, a lot of me feels like that's because Nia has to monitor Danny. And she knows that she has to be the sober person in their relationship to watch him. What do
Mhm.
you, first of all, what do you think about their argument? Whose side are you on? Because they're apparently are sides, or are all three people valid?
Can't remember Jasmine's argument in this situation, and I will speak on Jasmine later. But Brittany, if we just put Brittany versus Nia,
Nia.
I was gonna say Nia. Brittany versus Nia, there's not a wrong or there's not a right.
Hmm.
I do feel like you're on a television show. And when you sign up for that television show, a part of that is like you don't really have privacy. Like if you got some drama, you need to talk about it. That's how you stay on a television show, is kind of bringing some stuff to the forefront. However, do I think that Nia or Danny we're going to sit up there and be like, Danny has a drinking problem and I don't know what to do about it? Absolutely not. I wouldn't expect Brittany to do that either. The thing that I struggled with is Nia's role on the show for the this is season 2. All of season 1, Nia has just been like the added commentary.
Hmm.
Not to say that she's like a friend of, she's a whole cast member, but her role on the show has been that added commentary. She'll check Danny, but Danny didn't really have much going on season 1 for them to be like the standout couple. So to say that they keep things so private all the time while everyone else is sharing their lives, I disagree. Janet has not shared much of anything about her life. She brings drama. Zach, we haven't heard much about his life. We heard more about his life at the beginning of the season between him and his boyfriend. That was really about it. Zach brings drama. We can't help it that Jax is such a big, loud personality that everybody's in Britney's business. That's your husband's fault.
Hmm.
But to say that Nia is super private and she doesn't want to talk about these things on camera, I do think that was unfair. I just think that Brittany, you might feel exhausted because Jax was the whole of season 1 and the whole part of the season of the beginning of season 2. Now we finally have room for these other people to make space. And it felt like they were kind of kicking Nia off the cliff. Like, will you take up the space with your drama now? Damn.
I totally see that. Before people come for me, I want to start off by saying it's really not that deep with certain topics in reality television. This is one of them.
Yes.
If you believe in your heart that Nia doesn't have to share a thing, that's completely fine for everybody listening. Completely fine. I don't. I think she has to share. And you know what? I'm okay with having that opinion. I think that that's I think that that's very much the two avenues that Bravo
Yeah.
has provided for people. I think you either cause drama with other people among your cast or you share the
Yeah.
dirt that's in your life. You do one of the two. We'll hold space for you to do
Yes.
either. If you don't, like to use Real Housewives lingo, you get booted to the friend of. And
Mm-hmm.
so here's the thing, Nia, it's been friend of for too long. Now, for some
Mm-hmm.
people, they say they appreciate the balance of Danny and Nia on a show like this. And to that, I say, I understand that, but it's not the balance that you think it is. Let's
Mm-hmm.
wait 3 years and see how you feel about Danny. Because the thing about people who try to keep up an image that's not genuine is you can't do it forever. You
Yeah.
simply can't. And so, my perception of Danny and Nia is that nobody has an issue with Nia. Nia is simply the person who Danny sends out to smooth things over. She wants to keep her home peaceful. I don't blame her. She begrudgingly probably agreed to be on reality television. Her husband clearly loves it. He loves to do the voices, like he loves to do whatever, Danny, I'm coming for your job. Like, he
That's,
likes to do the voiceovers. He likes to do the iCarly. Like he's shown that he likes this.
yeah.
Um, I feel like she maybe begrudgingly went along with it. She's also from pageant world where she's
Yeah.
used to having her like presence being amplified. Like she's used to like after you complete the pageant, they very much say like please don't like make us look bad. You know what I mean? Like we'll take away your title. They do things like that. So I understand all of that, but the problem is when you're friends with someone and they have a history of minimizing things that are actually a problem, that becomes annoying. And it becomes annoying in just like a regular friendship. If you take a couples trip twice a year with the same six people and you've done it 6 years in a row, and every year, despite the fact you only see these people twice a year, every year your friend's husband gets too drunk and gets you kicked out from a local restaurant,
Yep.
throws up in the bathroom, causes you to have to pay money at the Airbnb, just argues with his wife, is disrespectful, causes the other guys to do something. There will be a point where people say, wow, I wish he wouldn't come. If
Yeah.
there's an individual who's drinking too much, eventually you would say, can you slow down? Because every time that you reach that point, there's no turning back. Like it's fun until it's not. And I think that that's Danny. And I think that he's gotten the reputation of being dark Danny for a reason. So I think it's bothersome that Danny tries to exude tired dad who just needs a break and
Mhm.
shares equal responsibilities with his wife. He doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
If we if we want to quickly jump into episode 6 and then come right back to 5,
yeah, we could do that.
just to prove a point about what you said. Um, when we're in season 6, when we're in episode 6, there is a moment where Nia is coming back from doing something and Danny has been at home with the kids. And she walks in and he's like folding clothes. And she goes, "Oh, thank you so much for doing that." He was like, "Yeah, no problem." And they end up going towards the bedroom because they say that their oldest son is awake. And she goes, "Ugh, I'm so tired." And he was like, "You're so tired? What do you mean you're so tired? You haven't even been here all day." When he said that, I was like, imagine how she feels in that house doing what you just did all day, every day.
Hmm.
Because he basically brushed off the fact that she was so tired because he had been at home with the kids for however long. That was disrespectful. Even if it was a joke, a laughy laughy, it didn't come off like that. And
Hmm.
that's where I was like, okay, there's a little imbalance, and it's okay to have imbalance, especially when raising kids. Whatever you decide your roles will be, but to invalidate her tired when you were home with the kids all day, when she majority of the time spends her day at home with the kids, that was a little rude. So that was just a jump into that, but to come back and address Danny, I agree. Danny's gotten the nickname for a reason,
Hmm.
right? We can all agree on that. The only thing that I'm struggling with this season is, as a viewer, we didn't know about Danny's drinking issue
Hmm.
until maybe episode 3. That's when they started to touch on it, or episode 2, and then all of a sudden they're on Nia and saying like, you need to share, you need to be more open, Danny's an alcoholic. To me, again, and this is likely editing, we don't know the span of time that's going on between end of season 1, beginning of season 2 in the episodes, but it seemed aggressive. It all of a sudden it was like, who's got the problem next that's not talking about it? Danny and Nia, you guys need to spill the beans. You need to do it ASAP. We're tired of holding up this cast. It was like, damn, we this is just season two, and you guys have been holding it up because your drama is just so large.
Hmm.
It's so big. And now I think everybody is tired of talking about Jesse and Michelle. And so they're just trying to find the next thing. And Danny just so happened to be passed out in bed. And they honed in on that. That is the only thing that I disagree with. I'm like, call him out. This is reality TV. Feel whatever way you want to feel. But to feel so strongly between episode one and episode five, it seemed jarring to me. I was like, dang, I mean, we might be onto something, but relax.
Yes.
Came out of nowhere.
I think that that reveals to me that this group is actually friends with each other outside of this show.
Mhm.
I think that that reveals to me that they actually have a history with
Yeah.
Danny. And Jax is Danny's biggest hater. Since the
Yes.
trailer dropped and people were like, "Oh my God, Danny and Nia, they're so cute." He was like, "Just wait." Like, just wait. And so, is Danny laying in bed a big deal? No. But
No.
we heard Nia snap at Danny on the phone, and we
Yeah.
wanted to know what was said on the other end, all of us.
Yeah.
So we we saw Danny say shut up to whoever when he was in an argument. I don't remember. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, so I'm not one of those people who believes like, yes, if somebody gets you to a point where you're reacting to them, like, oh, that's your true personality.
Mhm.
However, I do believe, and maybe people are like misusing the word as well. I think that you can have an issue or an intolerance to alcohol without being an alcoholic. Like, do I think that Danny is necessarily drinking every day? I don't get that vibe from
Mhm.
him at all. But I do get the vibe that when he drinks, he's
Yes.
entitled, he's
Yes.
touchy, he's
Yeah.
a different personality. And I think that that makes Nia anxious because it's come up a lot of times in her friendships.
I'm so glad you said that, Leah. I do not believe that Danny is an alcoholic based off of the evidence that us as viewers have seen. Now, there are different levels of being an alcoholic. You can be the type of alcoholic that won't drink for 3 days, and then as soon as you drink, you do binge, and you struggle to get out of that binge, or you come out of that binge and then you don't drink for this amount of days, but as soon as you drink, you binge. That is a different level of alcoholism, which could be something that Danny is experiencing, but I'm just going to say, based off of the things that we have seen as viewers and based off the editing, I do not believe that Danny is an alcoholic, but I do believe that once he drinks, he does not know what his limit is. He might just be so excited to be free of his responsibilities that he's like throwing three sheets to the wind. Whenever I get the chance, I'm just going to have a good time. That's how I was initially interpreting Danny's drinking. It's like, I don't get that many fun times, and I don't get to drink like that. So when I drink, I'm a drink to get drunk. Absolutely.
I think
Does
he's
that
been
affect
like
you in your
this.
life? Yes. Do you act a plum fool when you are drunk? Clearly. You might just need to put down the alcohol if you don't know how to act or if you don't know your limits. You're too grown to not know your limits.
Making assumptions as we do based off limited information as reality TV viewers, it's
Mhm.
my assumption and perception that if I were just to hazard a guess, I think Danny's always been like this. I think he's always been, even since college, I could very much picture him being the friend
Yeah.
that, listen, don't invite Danny for one drink. Don't pass Danny one beer and think the night's over. It's like when Ruffles says you can't just have one. Like that's Danny. If he's gonna start the process of getting into a good time, I think as soon as he has one and starts to feel that buzz, he's like, "Hey boys." Like I think
Mhm.
he's very much ready to go, and I think it's all or nothing. He either drinks or he doesn't. That's why he got a water when he met up with Jasmine and Melissa. Like I think like it's very much like yeah, like I said. And I went through a stage where I was like that. Like
Mhm.
there was a time in my life where early 20s where when me and my friends would go out, we would be like, if we're not blacking out, we're not going.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to go to have 5 drinks and feel like kind of shit. I'm going to go to stay until it's closed down, wake
Mhm.
up in the morning and be like, So what happened? And that's problematic.
Escapism. He's trying to escape at any he's trying to escape at any opportunity that he can, escape his duties as a husband, escape his duties as a father, escape his duties as a worker, someone who has to go to work. Escapism. It happens all the time, but it's a very slippery slope into substance abuse for sure. When you are constantly trying to escape the things that are happening in your regular life. And that's what this seems like. He's trying to escape his responsibilities, if only for a few hours or for whatever. But I think Nia sees that, and Nia is also like hyper aware. So
Hmm.
I get it.
And it's like, listen, couples have what works for them. If she's
Mhm.
just decided, I don't really like drinking. So
Yep.
when we go out, Danny's going to be the one that gets drunk. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like, I'm okay with that. Then
Yeah.
that's completely fine. That's completely fine. And here's what I want to add in terms of uh the argument of it all. Where Janet loses me is bringing up the fact that Nia was in AA. She loses me with that.
Mm.
There was no need to bring it up. To
Yeah.
be honest with you, do I believe because it was said once, quickly and under the rug, that producers asked her that question. Do I
Mm.
believe that they did? 100%. Do I think Janet's stupid enough to answer that question and speak on it and
1,000%.
give them a sound bite? Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
100%. She should have
Mhm.
just said nothing.
Yes. Correct.
So Danny wakes up from his drunken slumber to overhearing them arguing. And he comes out and he's like, Nia, you don't need to be here. And she's like, I do need to be here because this argument's about us. The shock in his face, like,
I mean, because he went to sleep and there was no drama about him, and then he woke up to the whole house
I
exploding over. I get it. I would have been shocked too. I'd been
would
like,
have been
"What the
shocked
hell?"
too. He's
I
flabbergasted.
thought we were still talking about Jesse and Michelle. How did we become front center?
And like here's what I'll say again. Friend to friend, you're taking a trip. Would Nia ever need to say, "Hey guys, Danny's
Mhm.
drunk. He's gonna go to bed." No, okay. But you're on
Yeah.
a reality TV show. Brittany is also coping how she can with her
Mhm.
situation to intoxicated Brittany, whose business is all out there. If anybody tries to cover their shit up, Nia happened to be the person who tried to do it. But if
Mhm.
anybody tries to cover their shit up, I think Brittany would have had a reaction. I've been like, you
Yeah.
think this is the Brittany show? You think this is the Brittany and Jack show? Say your shit.
I think Brittany was drunk. That's
Yep.
what everybody was drunk except for
Everybody.
Nia.
Yeah.
Except for Nia. Everybody was drunk, but if we're just talking about Brittany, I think Brittany is going through a lot this
Yep.
season. I think she is finally has her eyes wide open about the reality of Jax. Don't know why we needed this long to see the reality of Jax when Jax has not been a different person at all, ever on television. But I think Brittany is battling a lot, and she's probably feeling the stress of the fact that, like, I am the front runner of the show, and I'm tired of talking about my drama because it's so draining. So you're right, anybody would have gotten it from Brittany that night, which makes me side a little bit more with Nia
Hmm.
because I'm like, it wasn't. This is not a Nia issue.
Right.
This is a Brittany being tired of the focus being on her and everybody being tired of Jesse and Michelle. I don't think anybody wants to talk about Jesse and Michelle again. Like they're over that relationship, right? Who's the next person they're going to turn to? They
And I
can't.
think they're tired of Nia. Like, I really do. Like, I agree with that. I think that's true. But I also just think Brittany, like, Brittany doesn't have like that much emotional regulation in terms of the reactions that we've seen from her for years on
Mhm.
Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah.
Okay. Nia does. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think that I just think people are tired of Nia saying something the nice way. Like it's sort of like when people say, like, don't
Yeah.
bullshit me, don't beat around the bush. Like I
Yeah.
think people are tired of her saying things nicely about things that aren't nice. I think that's
Also,
what they're tired of.
you're absolutely right. I also, you bring up producers, like giving Janet probably that question. I think producers are also in everyone's ear talking about what's the next thing?
Hmm.
What next?
Why
What
isn't Nia shared?
why isn't anybody else sharing? Because what I'm struggling with is like Janet and Jason
Hmm.
also don't share. Neither does Zach outside of his situation with his boyfriend. There are other people on this cast who are more upfront who don't share. I think that people, maybe Brittany is looking at Nia like maybe she doesn't like the fact that Nia has emotional regulation and she can't fathom, why are you not cussing Danny out for being this? Why are you not coming to us and crying about Danny? I would come to you guys and cry about Jax.
Oh, she would.
That's your choice though.
Mm-hmm.
Reality television or not, I really think that Brittany is projecting onto
100%.
Nia.
Yep.
You have all the you clearly have
100%.
issues in your relationship, but you're not coming to us and you're not crying and you're not cussing your husband out.
100%.
Maybe that's not Nia's style, but I still think Nia is bringing something of value to the show. And I do think like they've spoken about this issue. Now everybody on the cast will have an opinion about it, and that might take a little bit of the story. Cool. But if we jump to episode 6, when all the girls come and they're like, yeah, yikes, our bad. That was tacky of us. I was like, it was, because you could have gotten the same drama, but all y'all bitches were drunk. So
Listen, taking a couples trip in and adding a copious amount of alcohol, just stop doing that. In my opinion, I feel like that's a recipe for disaster. You don't know how
Mhm,
people's marriages actually are. You know what they tell you. Like, "Oh, we're
mhm.
great." And then like you take that trip and everything starts
Yeah.
to come out. The last thing I'll add before we continue the wrap of episode 5 is when I just did an episode with Echo Does Radio, we also talked about the Valley. And
Mhm.
one thing I want to add about Nia in reflection that I just remembered was I think that it is also really easy for people to like Nia. And I think that we had the conversation about how reality TV is actually reflective of like the most conservative values that
Yeah.
we hold because it illustrates like the how we think other people should exist and in what
Mhm.
capacity. And so I think that a lot of women see Nia, who's soft, sweet, soft-spoken, doesn't respond harshly, is nice to her husband. She's
Mhm.
doing what women are supposed to be doing. And I think that it's very easy to want to protect that. And I think it's very easy to feel empathy for that type of personality. And I think it's very easy to even say like, "Oh, like I think that that's how women should react." So then I think to see a personality like Brittany, for example, who does take up more space, is more reactive, is acting differently, I think it's kind of revealing of how people think that women are allowed to react. Like I think a lot of you, I think for a lot of viewers, it should be telling of how you think women should react. And a lot of people would like to think that they're Nia, but you're really probably going to look more like Brittany if we were to bring a camera into the house. You know what I mean? Realistically.
Yeah. Uh, excuse me.
Don't worry.
Um, I think that's a really good call out to say. And myself, when I'm watching these, just from a therapist perspective, I'm looking at each person and I'm saying, Brittany, like you do need emotional regulation. I wish you would have communicated this. I wish you would have said more of that. You can still be expressive and you can still take up space. But I do think for Brittany, like there's ways to be expressive and take up space and get your point across.
100%.
Oftentimes with Brittany, she's expressive and she takes up space, but you never get to her point. You never get you never get to the root cause. You never get to the crux of like why she's upset and how and what it's going to take to resolve it. You get a lot of like, Jax, well, I don't understand. And then like they're both drunk, or you get Brittany in this instance where she's drunk with her friends and she's saying, like, Brittany, you need to open up about your life. What you really want is for other people, for you not to be the main head person. Drama. That's what you want.
Hmm.
And so I'm watching this and I'm like, yes, be expressive, take up space, but there are other ways to do this. And then I'm watching Nia and I'm like, okay, she's still expressive and she takes up space in her own way.
Right.
It seems to me like she's having these conversations with Danny on the side. What would benefit is for her to be more vulnerable with the girls, because had Nia been more vulnerable, and this is only because you're on TV,
Hmm.
let me preface, if these people were not on TV, I would tell them to shut up and keep it in your home.
Same.
Talk with a safe person,
Same. Don't
therapist.
go on your couples trips anymore as
No,
well.
go on your couple trips. But since you're on reality television, I think Nia would have benefited with being more vulnerable with the girls earlier on. about her lived experiences growing up or about maybe some of the struggles that she's having with Danny. Like, Danny seems like he's trying to escape like fatherhood in any of his free time. Like, I'm kind of struggling with that. He's a great father when I need him to be, but like, what do I do if this comes up? How do you guys handle this? So I'm always watching like everybody, and I respect everyone how they want to show up and how they want to be perceived, but there's always room for improvement with every person. And if you watch this and you're saying like, I side more with Nia because she's soft and she's quiet and I'm gonna root for her. It's like Nia has room for improvement.
Hmm.
The same way that Brittany has room for improvement.
Hmm.
It's gonna look different though. So I love hearing the
Exactly.
perspective of like, well, people root for Nia because she's quiet. And I was like, I root for Nia because I like Nia.
And
I like
that's fair.
I like Brittany
Yes.
though too. I like Brittany without Jax a lot more. But I do think at the crust, the meat of it, Brittany was upset because she feels like she's holding all of the drama for the show and she's ready for other people to chip in as well and really hold their weight, which is fair because you're on reality television. You do have to hold your weight.
I think that first of all, if you like Nia and you feel like you sympathize with her, first of all, I want to make like it's not to say that that's how you think women should show up.
Yeah.
Like that's just to say that I think it makes it easier. I think
Mhm.
that it's very easy for women to defend women who come across great. I think
Mhm.
it's harder to defend the woman who's not coming across great. And I think that the thing is, I want to acknowledge that I'm not going to always come across great. Everybody's not going to, if we're being
Yeah.
honest. And so when I see somebody not articulate something great, I'm like, you know what? There's space for her to still be right and not have articulated that well. And when
Absolutely.
you add in all of the factors like being drunk, I truly don't believe it's about Brittany carrying the weight. I truly believe it's about being drained in
Mhm.
friendship with Nia and having her mask the problems going on. I
Mhm.
think it's very much like when you check in with your friend who keeps saying that everything is fine, or
Yeah.
and you hear their husband in the background say something like off color, or you hear their husband say something dismissive to them, and they're or even Angela on Real Housewives of Atlanta, like she always tries to over explain like Charles' behavior or something, you know what I
Yes.
mean? And she's like, we're just kidding. That's how we joke with each other. And I'm like,
Mhm.
fair, but is it, you know what I mean? Or are you
Yes.
trying to really get across that like this is okay? You know,
And what it comes down to is you're on a reality television show.
100%.
There are things that if you were not on a reality television show, your friends would not think twice about you being open about your marriage and your struggles. They would
And she probably would have been more open had she not had a camera in her face. And
exactly because you open yourself up for the world, but
maybe she doesn't want Danny's
you
family to know too. Like maybe it's
signed up for it.
that.
But you signed up for it. That at the end of the day, it's
That's the thing.
you signed up for it. So there is a certain
That's
amount
my issue.
of less privacy that you are warranted. Like you're
And
on a
if you don't like that, I think it's just easy to acknowledge, like maybe Nia and Danny aren't cut out for this. Like, because truly, I believe if you want to thrive on reality TV, it is inviting them into your home to see what that is. And if you have a situation that you don't feel like should be talked about, then don't sign yourself up for reality TV. Or if you have family members, and that's not to say either, listen, we all have traumas in our life. I'm not saying that if you go on reality TV, you need to talk about those. If somebody's been assaulted, if somebody has a childhood issue, no, I don't think that people should be forced to talk about their traumas. However, if you have, you know, let's say you have a sibling who's living with your parents right now and the situation's not great and you're also at home, but you want to act like that sibling's not there and not film them. Well, news for you, we're in the house, you know?
your current event, the things that are currently going on at your in your life when you sign up for a reality show, that is what you're going to have to talk about. You're going to have to discuss it.
Agreed. So moving on, we find out, okay, in one of the next scenes, Jesse is screaming into a pillow. We're still in episode 5. He's screaming into a pillow, meeting with a guru. His life coach tells him that his attention is like water. What did you think about Jesse seeing a life coach versus a licensed therapist?
So what I will say, a life coach, fantastic. Okay,
Okay,
this as a therapist, I don't have beef with any life coaches at all.
interesting.
I know how you go about life coaching. Yeah, we might have some differences in, but we serve two different purposes. A life coach will not necessarily like they're not going to diagnose you. They're not going to give you any mental health assistance. But what they're going to say is like you're stumped with this in your life. How do we get you unstumped? Do we apply to these different things? Do we send you on an adventure? Do we do ayahuasca in the wilderness? Should we change how we date? Do so it's very much like what do we do with the information that you may have learned in therapy, and how to like what are the action plans that we're going to do in your real life, like what are the tangible things that we're going to do. So those are things that a life coach will help you with. So no beef for me with the life coach. I think they can be beneficial if you know what you're going to them for and you understand their parameters. Now that I've given that disclaimer, Jesse being his life coach, no. Because I really think Jesse needs to deal with himself on an intimate level.
Get rid
And
of his ayahuasca demon. He needs a pope. He needs a therapist. He
yes, I think it's I don't want to call it inappropriate. Maybe what's the word? Not immature, premature. It's a little premature for him to jump to a life coach when you probably have not addressed some of the tendencies and maybe some of the patterns of abuse and maybe how you are in relationships or how this trauma has made you who you are as an individual. I think he was premature jumping straight to a life coach. No, you have real issues that you need to be discussing with a professional. Um, and knowing that that is who they saw for their marriage counseling is also
nuh-uh. Did I
isn't
miss that?
isn't that the episode? That is the man that they were seeing as a couple who was offering them couples coaching. I don't know what they call it. I don't know what he called it. He called it couples counseling on the episode, but I was like, anyways, that is the man that they saw. And they show a clip of them working with him on season one. Um, yeah, no. No, because they didn't need a life coach. A life coach for Jesse would definitely look like, what are you doing in your current relationship that's not working? Maybe we can try communicating like this to her. Maybe you can take her out on these dates. Maybe we can plan a month's worth of things to make her feel wanted and appreciated. Okay, what are you doing with your daughter? Maybe we can work on like some parenting stuff. Maybe we can schedule out how we do parenting schedule. A life coach is a little more surface. And again, there's it's tangible stuff that you can do, setting schedules, preparing for different things. How do we make a transition in our life? Like career wise. So, but the things that Jesse is dealing with, they're not life. No, he needs a therapist or a psychiatrist or a
And
psychologist.
they didn't need a couples therapist. I mean,
Well,
sure, but they needed an individual therapy as well because like
yes.
you, there's things going on there that are from before you guys got together showing up in
Mhm.
your relationship.
Yeah, there's trauma on both of their ends that shows up in their relationship. So I actually dropped a few videos on my TikTok and my Instagram about the difference between individual therapy and couples therapy. The goals are totally different. People might think that
I
they're the
saw
same.
that video.
Yes, they're not the same. Couples therapy is totally different from individual. In couples therapy, you're going to be working on the joint goals. Your therapist is managing the goals, the traumas, the expectations of two people in a session to come together on whatever your joint goals are that you want to succeed. You can uncouple in couples therapy. You can come to therapy and say, we are just trying to amicably uncouple. Cool. Individual therapy is just for the individual. If I saw someone in individual therapy and they were complaining to me about their spouse, I would be like, okay, how do we advocate for you? It's all about you. But if you come to me with couples therapy and you're complaining about your spouse that's sitting right next to you, I'm like, what are we going to do to get us back on track for this relationship?
Have you ever seen the show Couples Therapy as
I have
well?
to love it. I love
Love
it.
it.
I love
Love it. I had to stop watching it after a season though, because I was like kind of
it.
disturbed. Like I was like, okay. Like, cause I remember there was one guy. It's interesting to me how sometimes when watching that show, like you can tell certain clients who are in these relationships that they truly
Mhm.
just hate women because of how that they respond to her as well. Like I'll
Mhm.
never forget there was one guy who just was so resentful of every single thing the therapist
Yeah.
suggested. And I can't even imagine being the therapist and thinking, and she's gonna go home with him. You know what I mean?
And you know what? At the end of at the end of the day in couples therapy, for me, as long as there is not abuse in the situation, I continue to see couples, whatever choice the couple chooses to make in that session, going home where they choose to accept this person's behavior, I'll just always ask, what is your goal at the end of this? What do you want? Do you feel like continuing in this pattern will get you to this goal?
That's a good question.
Okay. So that is what Jesse needs. Jesse needs more of like, what is his end goal? Is his end goal just to be a good father and to be a good friend? Okay, well, what are the patterns that you're doing that are not contributing to what you actually want? Where do these patterns stem from? How can we address them in the past, or how can we address them in the future? How can we address them in the present? Teaching, giving him different coping skills. That's not what you're going to get from a life coach, which is why that man had him screaming into that pillow, which I don't necessarily believe that's the wrong thing to do. Like sometimes you need to express and get
Right,
out some of that extra energy.
right.
But
But a
yeah, no,
solution? Yeah. Maybe
yeah,
maybe that's like like some homework. That's not like the work itself.
yes, that's a good way to put it. Like the work itself is going to happen with a therapist. Maybe some of your homework, you can do that with a life coach. And that life coach, again, it's more tangible, it's more schedule. It's how do we get your life on track? How do we structure your life, for the way that you want it? Where your therapist is not sitting down and saying, this is how we're going to structure your life, and this is the schedule you're going to set. No.
They're
So
more going off of like what your goals are, your
yeah.
therapist, versus pushing you to a point that they think like I feel like a life let's just go on to the next topic.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to. Okay, so in the next scene, Jasmine comes to see Luke and Kristen's new house that they're renting, and they talk about Jasmine talks about feeling triggered by Nia glossing over Danny's behavior that night because she did the same thing on Halloween. So the pattern of or of Nia glossing over or excusing Danny's behavior is there.
Mhm.
She also touches on in her confessional how being in a queer relationship makes people take the touching not as seriously. Whereas if it were Janet, it would have been a big deal to Jason. Um, I appreciated her taking that moment to have that conversation because although I've not been in that position, I could imagine that being very frustrating.
Yeah. I appreciated her for bringing that up. But I also just lightly want to touch on Jasmine this season. I feel like after season one, she either did a couple interviews or made some comments about, her not having that moment on season one. Um, and she's getting more on air screen time and more camera work, and she's involved in a couple more conversations. So where I appreciated her, because that's a very serious incident. Like Nia should not have glossed over that. However, I in that moment wanted to know, after learning that Danny has reached out, he's apologized a few times. I want to know, like, what did Jasmine want from that situation? What did she want the outcome to be? What would she like for the outcome to be with Nia this season in their friendship, addressing the incident, holding Danny more accountable? That's what I'm curious for Jasmine. Is and she does not have to verbalize this to Nia. My thought process is not for her to sit down and say, "This is what I need from you, Nia." It's for her personally. If you feel triggered by Nia, how can you move forward without being triggered? Because Danny's the one that will apologize to you. Danny is the one who committed the action. Danny was the one who was inappropriate. Now, what do you want from Nia to move forward in your friendship for you feeling triggered? What does moving forward look like to her? I'm curious to see like how the rest of the season goes with that,
I
just in
think
regards to her friendship with Nia.
curious about that too. I think that for it would definitely be like you said. I don't think that Jasmine has to have the burden of saying like what to do or not do. I'm sure it's uncomfortable to even speak up for yourself anyways. You
Absolutely.
know, she's a queer black woman in the friend group with mostly white people. I don't blame her for this being uncomfortable anyways. It's also like, do I lose my friendship with you, Nia, because your husband hit on me and
Yeah.
hit on my partner? Do you now have some sort of weird issue with me because I didn't ask for this? Like, I'm quite literally not even interested in him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure that that's uncomfortable having to tell your friend that her husband, who she's with and loves and is having children with, and
Yeah.
claims that he's only interested, only has eyes for Nia. And
And
then
and let me clarify, when I say things that I would like to know for Jasmine, these are things that I just want to her. I'm curious to know how she kept it in the back of her head
me too. That's
for
what I
how
mean.
she engages with Nia.
Me too. I don't need her to say any of these things. And
No, yeah, you don't have to
yes,
say it, you don't have to ask it, you don't have to have the
100%.
expectation of Nia to say anything. But when you experience something like that with a friend's partner, husband, spouse, whatever, you have to do for reflection on what do you want going forward in this relationship? Do you want space? Do you want to wait for Nia to come up and approach you, or do you just want to navigate and not have that friendship with Nia because that's Nia's husband? How do you want to navigate? Because it's going to get more difficult with the friend group if you haven't decided in your head what would be your ideal navigation around this situation. What are your emotions? And are your emotions more towards Danny, or are they more towards Nia, or are they equal for both of them because they're a couple?
I could see my friends losing respect for me if I let my husband or boyfriend touch them
Yeah,
and then let my boyfriend see them next time and get just as drunk as he did the last time that he touched them. I
absolutely.
think that Nia did have a responsibility to, if she wants to maintain a friendship with if you listen, if Jasmine's really your friend, it should bother you to your core that
Yeah.
he was felt entitled enough to touch her and make her uncomfortable. There are so many layers to this situation that if like, you know, I think that people would be aware of if they were in this situation. So I feel like it is up to Nia to say, you know what, Danny, you can't drink around my friends.
Yeah.
That's the boundary. If you want to come and if you want to be part of things, that's fine, but you won't be this level of intoxicated around my friends. You
Yeah.
won't, or you won't go. And I do think that she should have done that. And I think that if she did that, I think that maybe Jasmine wouldn't be triggered by her because
Mhm,
I think skipping forward, I also want to talk about Janet on Viall Files. And the
mhm,
crux of what I got is on Halloween night, it was not just Jasmine and Melissa who were touched inappropriately, allegedly,
mhm.
by Danny. It was multiple women. Multiple
Yes.
women called Nia and said, I have a problem with Danny. He makes me super uncomfortable. Your
Mhm,
husband touched me and did this. I did not like it. And that Jasmine and Melissa were actually one of quite a few people who
mhm,
had that exact same experience with him that evening. And so I'm listening to that, and Janet saying, Danny just doesn't make me comfortable.
mhm.
Like, he's a straight man. He's made other women uncomfortable. If he comes into a closet with me and shuts the door, I'm going to feel uncomfortable. He's a man. I'm a
Yeah.
woman. Like, do I think Danny's going to do anything to me? No, but it just made me uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. In the same way, I would say for Jasmine, just to dictate for herself what she wants moving forward with the lack of apology or awareness from Nia, that's on Jasmine to decide how she wants to move forward in the relationship. And
100%.
I also feel like that is something for Nia to think about as well. How do you want to show up in your friendships when your husband has acted inappropriately?
Hmm.
What do you want to do?
Hmm.
What are going to be your consequences, or what are going to be your boundaries for you to set those consequences? Are your boundaries that you talk to your friends first and you get their side of the story and then you go to Danny? Is your boundary, do you start with Danny and then go to your friends? Do you blanket apologize and then say, Danny, you can't drink? Or do you sit down and have a conversation? Those are things that Nia will also need to think about moving forward with this friend group and with whoever else was at Halloween, that when Danny acted inappropriately. What are you going to do as his wife and as these people's friends? What's next? Because a soft
Yes.
apology or brushing it off is not enough. Yeah.
Yes, and I think we're at the tail end of people realizing that. Like, I think
Yeah.
we're at the tail end of it brushing it off, glossing over, or just
Mhm.
removing Danny from the party not being enough anymore. I think people are
Yeah.
like, address it.
Especially if it's repeated. If it's a repeated action,
Yeah.
then maybe Danny just he does need to put down the alcohol.
Because there is people, like, I don't want to project my own situation or anecdotal experiences, but there are people who are completely different when they drink. And
Mhm.
again, these are exacerbated qualities that maybe weren't there before.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, when they drink, there are people who become completely different and they quite literally need that what do they call it? Like the filter, like they need
Yeah.
a filter. Some people need a filter
Yeah.
because the way that they act is, out of control. Or some people really do get mean. I was a bartender. Some people actually get mean. Certain alcohols actually do make certain people get act differently.
It triggers your subconscious, the part of you that you've been trying to bottle in, things that you have not addressed in your life, those tend to come out when you are using substances. And that's kind of what I was touching on with the Jesse
Hmm.
situation. The drugs did not make Jesse act bad. The
Hmm.
drugs exacerbated parts of him that were already within him,
Hmm.
whether they're known or unknown. And they do the same thing with Danny, whether they're known or unknown, whether the trauma is something that you think about daily and you try not to bring out or not, they will come out.
Towards the end of the episode, this is where, like, on a friendship level, Janet loses me. Okay. Could Nia be talking about her childhood experience to distract? Sure. Do I think that's what was happening? I don't
I
personally.
would.
I don't get that impression. I feel like, if anything, the kinder, more gracious thing that they could have taken from that is that Nia has been in situations before that are outside of her control.
Mhm.
And when she's in these situations, she has chosen to lead with kindness or grace, or perhaps masking the situation because that makes it easier for her to get through. And I think that that could have been like the kinder takeaway versus just saying that she was trying to evoke sympathy or move on. And to go a step further, when she leaves, for then Janet to bring up the fact that she recognizes things in her ex-husband with Danny. Listen, I just sat here and said that I want to see things on reality TV. This was a conversation for when the cameras dropped. We gained nothing by viewers for knowing this. You didn't need to share your experience like that, Janet, because honestly, we don't deserve it. We haven't liked you enough to be worthy of you sharing your story like that. And second of all, it was a projection. You did project and steal that moment, and it was weird.
So when I was watching that moment, if I were her friend, my immediate thought would be like, oh, that's why she handles these situations the way that she does.
Mhm.
Because everybody, the whole 2 episodes, 4 and 5, I mean, this whole season, let's just say the whole season, in dealing with Nia, they're like, well, why don't you do this with Danny? Well, why don't you handle him like this? Well, we don't see that. You're not speaking up enough. Those are the way y'all would react.
Mhm.
Nia giving that backstory was like a full circle moment. It was like, oh, I get it. You don't react this way just because you don't want to tell your business on reality television. You don't react this way because of the things that you dealt with in your past. You are choosing not to meet it with anger or vitriol or loud voice or and raised voices and publicly because you've either experienced what that does to people in the past. You're considerate of people who may be going through their own issues and you want to safeguard them. At the crux of it, still, you're on a reality television show.
Mhm.
But I do think you were not going to see Nia change who she is, how she reacts because of things from her past, just because she's on a reality television show. What I think we're going to see, or what I hope we will see going forward now that it has been brought to the forefront, is maybe we'll get more screen time with Danny and Nia discussing those very real issues and hearing more about how it affects Nia. That is my hope for that. Now, for Janet to take what she said and twist it into her trying to be excused from his actions or gain sympathy, it speaks to Janet's emotional immaturity. And it speaks to the fact that Janet is not bringing anything. to this show. We're complaining about Nia and Danny not bringing anything. Janet brings nothing but drama and chaos, which can be good, but we're not getting anything from Janet's
Janet
personal life.
self-produces as well. Like, listen,
Yes.
her Dave and Buster's thing was very she like, self-produces
Yes.
herself. She does what she thinks the audience would find relatable. I
Hmm.
recognize you, Janet, because I am also from the Midwest, a girl in Ohio. Okay, I know, like that's your
Yeah.
game plan.
And I don't
Um,
think Nia is self-producing herself.
no, I
I
don't.
genuinely, and I think that might be an additional reason of why I like Nia is because I don't get self-producing from her. I'm getting like, this is genuinely how I would react with y'all here and without y'all here. And I think we saw that in episode 5 with her being on the phone and telling Danny to shut up. We have seen clips of her, Danny, tighten up. We've seen that since
And you
the
know what? Production, like, let me call myself out. Production may have decided who Nia is, and we are
yes,
only seeing clips that back that up. There
yes.
could be moments where she calls Danny out. There could be
We've
moments where
seen
she yells
little
at the
we've seen
girls.
little snippets of
Mm-hmm.
it from
Mm-hmm.
season 1 into this season. Um, Again, is that enough for the viewers? No, but again, with editing, if we're only taking what we can see from editing, I take Nia to be genuine just as much as I take Michelle's unlikable ass to be genuine as well.
Listen, Michelle has the potential to be a star, and only
Yes,
because
but Michelle sometimes is a disaster.
a
Just a
disaster.
disaster.
You are a disaster.
That was my favorite line. But that's just goes that I'm just speaking to the point of I believe Nia to be genuine and I believe someone who I don't like to be genuine as well. And I do not view that for Jasmine. I mean for Janet. The same way that Brittany is calling for Nia to be more open, the same way that Michelle has been more open, the same way that we see Jasmine trying to be more open is the same call out we need for Janet.
You know what's one thing that's true though?
Yeah.
If we really want reality TV to be real and like mimic what we're going through in our lives and like see it reflected on the screen, the
Mhm.
one thing I will say is the situation that can occur when a friend is in a relationship that you could potentially be concerned about and you make the decision as to whether or not you ask them about it.
Yeah.
And then also you have to see how they respond to you. There
Mhm.
is a lot of people who get very defensive and are like, you don't know my relationship. Like, please don't make
Mhm.
assumptions. That moment was very real
Yeah.
between friends. Like, unfortunately, we saw it play out on camera, which is, in
Mhm.
my opinion, inappropriate. However, that is what they are signed up
Yeah.
for. That is the reality TV of it. But that was like a very genuine moment between friends, like Janet being the person that takes it there and is like, well, I'm concerned. And I've been concerned actually, because this reminds me of this. Like,
Yeah.
was it inappropriate? Yes. But is that real for people who are in friendships? It
Yes.
is.
I also think with reality television show, people are gonna hate this. I think we need to get a little more comfortable with like a smidgen of boredom, a smidgen of people being boring on television because that is the reality. I see a little bit more of that with Mormon wives. um, with them having the opportunity to be a little bit boring because people understand, oh, they don't drink, they don't do da 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 da. And I feel like we should just a little boring on reality, just a little,
Hmm.
just open up that opportunity just to be a little boring because sometimes a little boring is the good balance that you need.
You're right. You're right. Because you know what? Like Love Island USA season 6 was never boring, but there was moments where it was just fun to watch.
Yes,
It was good to watch. Like we
yes.
don't always need to have our nervous system on 10 while we're watching these shows and be traumatized and triggered.
And I think the opportunity on episode 5 of The Valley would have been a great opportunity for a little bit of boredom because there's been such heavy drama this season.
Hmm.
It is so intense. It is so ugly. The men are so horrible. And there's sometimes I root for the men, but this season the men suck. So I
Hmm.
really wish like they would have let episode 5 just be a little boring. Like
Hmm.
we didn't need the
Not
big.
us skipping episode 4 because we said it was boring and we're not going to recap it. Oh,
You're right.
we're so embarrassing. Like, you know what? We can be hypocrites too. We
But now
can.
episode 4 was boring.
Like the whole way through. Like we're talking about
Well,
5 minute patches.
I'm just saying a little boring
A little boring.
because the way I say boring, the way I would have loved to see episode 5 is them all being drunk at the
Same.
table and just cracking jokes
Same.
and just being hilarious.
Hmm.
And maybe teasing a little bit of Michelle and Jesse for finally being able to shut up and the drama not be on them. Like just
Huh?
that is a type of boring that would have been perfect for episode 5. But
Agreed.
it cranked up. I mean, it
It
happens.
happens.
Um,
Okay.
Leah, I
Yeah.
totally forgot. We have a cliffhanger that I left everybody on about Jason.
Thank you for bringing this up. Why do you have beef with Jason?
First, let me apologize for leaving everybody on the cliffhanger because we spent that whole episode with me being like, I'm gonna come right back to that. I'm gonna come back to it. And we never came back to it. I have beef with Jason because I feel like Janet is producing Jason this season as well. But it was episode 3 the one where Michelle called Jesse a disaster. Was that episode 3?
I won't lie to you, I don't know the episode number, but I
They
know
were
what she
all
called him that.
okay, they were all at the winery and he pulls her aside right before or in the midst of that happening. I want to say it was before. All the everybody is talking and Janet is sitting next to Jason and was it Jesse who was yelling at Janet? Someone was yelling at Janet and calling her out of her name and Janet was so clearly getting worked up and emotional about it and it was valid. And it was a man though. He was like he was berating
Was
Janet.
it Zach or was it Jesse?
I want to say it was Jesse.
I think it was too.
It had to have been Jesse that was berating Janet. Jason sat his ass right there next to Janet the whole time. So much so that Janet got so upset, she stood up and like waved her finger and emotionally walked away. And Jason sat there and was like, in my mind, I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Excuse my language.
Mm-hmm.
My own husband is watching another man berate me
Mm-hmm.
and is not saying, hey, dude, take your tone down when you're talking to my very pregnant wife. I was flabbergasted. And
I
it was
was
at that moment where I said, you know what? Jason does this a lot with Janet. And again, Janet is not likable to me. I do not like Janet.
same. Hmm.
But when you are with your spouse, especially when your spouse is being berated by another man, and you sit there and don't say anything,
I
you're on my
literally
show.
thought that too. I was like waiting to see where you were going with this because I also thought it was crazy Jason didn't say anything, but I also don't like Janet. You know what I mean? So I'm like,
Good.
but I
But
can
still,
acknowledge when something's wrong. I'm like,
at that point, I said, okay, so Janet is overproducing herself. Jason does not take up for his wife. But we get to episode 6 where Jason is vehemently what's the word I'm looking for? Not advertising, advocating for
yes.
Jasmine to get an apology from Danny.
Uh-huh.
In my mind, I was like, somebody just cussed your wife out, and you aren't going this hard for your own wife, but you're going to bat for Jasmine after you admitted that Danny has apologized to her a number of times. But you're going to bat for Jasmine when you let Jesse cuss your wife out.
I feel like
I'm
Janet
flabbergasted.
told Jason to go in there. I feel like Janet was like, you should be upset about this. I feel like that because I feel
Mhm,
like Janet was getting the weight of having to think Danny's drinking was suspect. And
mhm,
like because Jasmine also felt triggered by his drinking and it wasn't just her being locked in the pantry with him, like I feel like she was like, especially after him sitting there and saying
mhm.
nothing, she was like, get your behind out there and
Yes.
you stand up for Jasmine. Like you say
Yeah.
something this time. You say something this time.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
You're totally right. But Jason, this whole season, I've been like,
He's on mute a lot.
but this season he's talking more.
Oh,
And when he talks, it makes me go, huh. When he was in the car with Jax, he was really lax with Jax, taking him to the mental
oh
health
yes.
facility. He
Hmm.
was really lax. Like nobody's calling Jax out for just the clarity of him being shitty. He's really lax. And then, but then when he brought it back to Brittany, he was like, "Yeah, I told Jax, da 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 da, and we're just really disappointed." And I was like, "Hold up, no, you didn't. You didn't
Yeah,
do
she
that.
was like, "Did you say that?" And he was like, "Well, no, I just thought of that right now." And she was like,
What's the point?"
"Thanks for nothing."
Nobody's checking Jax. And then we immediately cut to, well, we didn't immediately cut, but then we
Right.
cut to Janet getting cussed out by Jesse. And Jason's like, "Do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do." But as soon as like Danny has to be reprimanded for being too drunk and being inappropriate. Rightfully so. The reprimand was right. The
Hmm.
reprimand was right. But we get Jason who's like, and I'm going hard for Jasmine. I'm advocating for Jasmine because what you did to Jasmine, that is not right. I'm like, then you had multiple opportunities to speak up to these other men in this group.
Hmm.
And I feel like Danny is a soft target for Jason, probably because he's tiny. But this is the person that you decide to like grow and push out your chest with?
Wait, I
When
have a
you
note about that. I have a note about what I thought during this exchange. Since we're there, I'm going to piggyback off of why you dislike Jason
Okay,
to things getting heated between Danny and Jason.
okay.
And I had a note written. The fans feel like Jason was carrying the torch for Janet. Do you feel that way? Or since we've had this conversation, did you feel like he was actually that upset for
No,
Jasmine versus Janet?
I don't, and
Okay.
that's my biggest thing. Again, what Jasmine experienced with Danny, 1,000% inappropriate. She should receive apologies for the rest of her life.
Hmm.
Do I think Jason felt that strongly about it? Absolutely not.
Okay.
Mainly
Same.
because Jason has had multiple, multiple situations that he has witnessed firsthand and hasn't checked anybody on it at all. Again, this man just berated your wife sitting right next to you on the stone wall outside, pregnant, and you sat he didn't go after Janet. He didn't say, "Hey, dude, calm your tone when talking to my wife." He and no correction, he was the quietest I've ever heard a mouth be quiet. But this situation is a situation that you're like, and I'm friends with Jasmine.
I
I
think
do
that's literally one of the first times, what's his name?
Jason.
Jason has ever stood up to his friends.
It
That's what I have a
is.
note about. I have a
It
note that,
is.
and he saw his life flash before his eyes. He said, like Danny's actually mad. Let me
Oh,
walk this back.
because in that same conversation, if you were to close your eyes and
Mm-hmm.
listen to Jason in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
you can hear Jason start to
Mm-hmm.
go
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all of the gusto that he had that Janet probably told him
The
about.
wind was knocked out of his sail.
As soon as Danny said, "Hey, whoa," Jason started stuttering over his words and
Uh,
being like, "I mean, sure." It didn't sound like an original
he
thought.
was like, you apologized to her? I don't think I knew that before.
And then Danny goes, "Yeah, a few times." "Oh, oh, oh." And then we
Oh,
see Jason melt again back
I'm like,
into
you're spineless. Come
the
on, stand
yes.
up.
So that is my beef with Jason. For anybody who was wondering when I left you on that cliffhanger, I have very big beef with Jason. And that is just it largely is centered around the fact that he let another man, supposedly his friend, disrespect and berate his wife, pregnant wife sitting right next to him with
Now,
no correction.
staying on Jason, do you believe where there's smoke, there's fire in
Yes.
regards to the rumors of him taking off his ring at the bar that we get in episode 6? Do you think there's any weight to that?
Hurts. I can't remember if they talked about this on an episode or if I saw someone else's TikTok discussing the ring coming off. Um, so don't quote me on where I heard this information. It could have been one of your videos, Leah, or it could have been on the show. Whoever said that, like, yeah, Jason's taking off his ring, he just doesn't have the pizzazz to to pick up anyone without it anyways. I think there's smoke, but it's only smoke.
Hmm.
Um, I don't really think
I
that it's
think Janet said that about her own husband. I think she was like, Jason?
that's what it was.
Yeah.
So I think there's smoke. I don't think that there's fire.
Hmm.
Because Janet seems like the person who would have started the fire and snuffed it out already anyways. So I do think there's smoke. I think there's like appropriateness for things which you should and shouldn't do, but that is totally stuff that you manage in your own home.
Listen, people think Janet's deep in Reddit, but they don't think she's deep in Jason's phone. Be so for real.
Janet is head over heels into his phone into his watch, probably in his headphones. She probably one of the little things in the back of his ear to track him forever. Like, no.
Yeah.
Again, I think there's smoke. I don't think there's fire. I don't think that he has the zhuzh to really go out and pick up anybody. I mean, he can't even advocate for his wife.
You
So
know, going forward a little at the end of episode 6, I will say Danny did make a solid case for himself as far as drinking in the pantry when he said that the bottles were in there. Like,
so
that's fair.
throughout episode 6 and them discussing Danny's drinking, this is where I've kind of formed the opinion that I would not necessarily, with the evidence that we have, I would not label Danny as a alcoholic. And the way that he described, like, I was as drunk as everyone else, and the liquor was in the pantry, and I took a swig. If you know, Janet made it seem like he downed a whole bottle.
Hmm.
There I did see a clip of her on Watch What Happened Live with Andy. And Andy called her out for that. He goes, "Was it a swig? Was it a drink?" And she's like, "I mean, it was a drink. I mean, it was a swig." You know, I think mincing those words is very harmful, especially to
Agreed.
a person's reputation.
Hmm.
Do I think that Danny was as drunk as everyone else? Like, I actually do. I
Hmm.
think everybody was on the same
Jesse was
level.
drunk before they left on the bus. He was easily the most
He
drunk.
was two sheets to the wind. Brittany was so drunk. She had a very verbal, vocal altercation and expression of her feelings being drunk. So much so that they had to come back in to apologize to Nia about how they approached her.
Hmm.
Danny was not the only person drunk that night.
Right.
Everybody was drunk, except for Nia. And she made a joke about that too. But everybody except for Nia
Yes.
was drunk.
Hmm.
And him taking a swig in the pantry does not immediately sell to me that he has a problem. But if that's where the bottles were, you want to take a shot, he's already late. He might be playing catch up.
Like
Then
I like it's like do I like did when I heard he shut the door, I'm like, okay, yes, obviously he went and got a drink in the closet to like whether hide from camera or hide from Nia.
but would he
I
do
did
that in
think,
front of Janet? Would
yeah,
he intentionally
exactly.
hide it? Janet?
Janet.
Janet?
Now, I do think it's possible too that he wasn't even thinking like that. Like, I
Yeah.
guarantee you, in the moment, he was very much like, I bet you he was thinking, I don't want Nia to hound me or nag me, as men say. Like, I don't want her to
Which is
nag me.
fair.
I'm about to go in there. I'll take my shot in there and then go out with a white claw and act like I'm just drinking a hard seltzer.
Which
I
I
would do
get
that.
it. I get it. That's I did it just does not measure up for me that he would go into the pantry and drink in front of Janet when trying to hide his drinking. Janet, that's all it is. He's gonna drink in front of Janet?
You're gonna do a secret in front of Janet? Like
In
she
front
was the
of
one
Janet.
on Reddit, like allegedly typing the cast's secrets.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
the best case for Danny is whether Danny did or did not intend to drink in front of Janet. That's the best case.
Janet?
Janet,
Janet? That's all I kept thinking was Janet. Are we really believing Janet?
I feel like this is pretty much everything. I feel like that was basically episode 5, basically episode 6. We did learn on I think it was the after show that Brittany's mortgage was $8,000. Now it's sitting at $18,000 because Jax didn't pay his taxes for 6 years. Listen, Jax is MAGA. Like he's so Jax is so easily MAGA. He's like, yeah, everybody gets behind on their taxes. Like everybody does that. I'm like,
To be fair, to be honest, there are a great deal of people who always get behind on their taxes. I think for the folks that like us that are under that certain tax bracket, we're
of
taught to never make a
course.
mistake on our taxes or else we'll be audited and thrown into jail. But if you look at a lot of these richer people, these corporations, the 1%, they're not all caught up on their taxes either, and they find a million and bajillion loopholes. So Jax isn't wrong. What I will say, is it right to be behind on your taxes? Absolutely not. I wouldn't play like that. I'm a black woman. The taxes are paid on time, whether I like.
Hmm.
Um, but I was disappointed in Brittany about her finding out that they were behind on their mortgage because Jax pays it. All I kept asking and or thinking to myself was, when has Jax ever been a responsible adult in your life?
Mm,
And why
hmm.
would you leave such a responsibility to Jax? And this is not to blame Brittany at all. Everybody makes mistakes. Again, you discuss the roles, you discuss how you want your relationship to be structured. But with Jax's clear past and clear pattern of not handling his core responsibilities in the middle of y'all getting a divorce and you're not at that home, what stopped you from being curious about the finances in your household? Because she has not been there. And of course, if she's thinking, if I'm not there, why am I paying the mortgage? But if you have not been there and you know that Jax is using and abusing substances, he's not all the way there. You were the person that kept him on track. At what point do we take personal responsibility of like, damn, I should have looked at that. Like, why would I trust this
Mm.
guy who clearly can't even put his pants on right every day or take care of his child to manage our mortgage when he is fighting me for little stuff, you know?
I feel like I'll have to rewatch her on the after show to see if I remember. Like, I can't remember if she said that Jax told her he was paying or
I
not.
mean, even a verbal, I just think Jax has
Check.
not been in the position for months to handle anything in his life. Everything in his life is falling apart. Why would the mortgage be the one thing not to fall apart?
That's a good point.
It
Brittany,
sucks. It
yeah.
sucks. But this goes back to everybody's sentiments on Britney is that from the moment Britney got on Vanderpump Rules and she started dating Jax, everyone has had been waving a flag for her and showing her this is Jax, this is Jax, this is Jax. Whether you choose to believe them or not, that is totally up to you. And he could have been a very different person with her. But we've had 10 years of new situations with Jax come up, even when they have not been on television. And in this situation, when you look back at your past with him, he doesn't have a pattern of keeping shit
That's so
together.
true. I definitely think that you're right about like Brittany checking into things, but simultaneously, I won't lie, I can't imagine what that situation is like. And
Yeah.
also, I don't know that even if she was aware of that, that it would change anything. Like that she would either have to come up with that money and not have it, or like I just sort of feel like because Jack said to her, and this is my biggest issue, her son is neurodivergent. He has a routine, a regimen, a normal. Jax didn't care about that. He
Mhm.
said, move out and go Airbnb to
Mhm.
Airbnb. It's not a shack, like I don't feel bad for Brittany. And I feel like she had so much to maintain
You're
as
right.
far as her son goes. Like, I don't even know if I could think of it. I don't even know if I would think to. And I almost feel like I would hate him so much. I'd be
Mhm.
like, and this motherfucker better pay on the first. Because if
You're
he doesn't, I'm calling the attorney.
you're totally right. I empathize with Brittany because she's dealing with a lot. On top of being on a television show, which is already a lot,
Hmm.
dealing with this man who clearly has narcissistic tendencies, a lot. And then you have to care for your child that is neurodivergent. That takes a lot as well. I just wish not we, I want to word this correctly. There still has to be personal responsibility
Absolutely.
because now you're in a situation where it's going to be twice as hard
Hmm.
to to get that situated. And I only wish for personal responsibility so that she can get back to her routine.
Absolutely.
Because this should be the last thing that you should have to
Deal
worry
with.
about
Hmm.
in the midst of your divorce
Hmm.
with your child and still balancing Jack's personality, rage texting her from his mental health retreat. Um, and then but you have to take some personal responsibility for your life and how hard or easy you want it to be going forward. You know it's already going to be hard. Unfortunately for Brittany, she has to take that extra step to stay
Mm-hmm.
on top of these things because Jax is he's just not responsible. He's never been that person. He's not going to be that person. He may have paid the mortgage up until this point, but when as soon as he became unreliable, unfortunately, it's just going to mean more work and mental load for Brittany to step up because she is the responsible party in the relationship. And the mortgage is a part of that responsible party because she doesn't want to lose that house.
Mm-hmm.
That Cruz has his routine set in. That is her home that she went at least 50-50 with Jax. So the same way you go 50-50 with him to get the home, you have to have some responsibility to at least check on the mortgage because you need to get back to some type of like routine and
And also,
regular
you'll fuck your
payment.
credit up, from my understanding,
It
right?
can. It
Yeah,
can, especially because they went into it and they probably signed both of their names
exactly.
on that deed and everything. So I still empathize with Brittany.
Me
I feel
too.
bad that she's in that situation, especially
Same.
with the child. But you do have to take some
I
personal
agree with you, though.
responsibility on the fact that
Yes.
like Jax has not been responsible for months. You've been complaining about his irresponsibility, his erratic behavior. In what world would the mortgage fall under that one responsibility that he keeps up with? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're in a position where you have to figure out like pay it, foreclose, sell, talk to your mortgage company. There are ways for you to get back right with your mortgage company. Like you have to take that initiative to reach out. But now you're in this position where it's two times as hard.
Tell you what, I knew 3 years ago when Jax tried to pose himself on Instagram as if he was a good dad, that he
Hmm.
wasn't. Like
Yeah.
I knew that time off camera meant nothing for the type of person that Jax was.
Hmm.
Even further, as soon as he bought a bar, I
Yes.
knew that that was the start of the end and
And
probably going to be the worst time.
they talk about their finances when he was talking about buying the bar. And Brittany's like, we're strapped. Like
Oh
this,
yeah.
we're doing so at what point?
And we
And
could tell, like Mama's
yes,
cheese dip, the menus, the
we
inside decor, we could tell.
We could tell, but in an effort to again, personal responsibility, I'm
Hmm.
going to advocate for women because I am a woman and I understand more of what a woman would go through.
Hmm.
But in this situation, I can't solely blame this on Jax. And there's a number of situations that we spoke about just on this episode where I can't solely just blame the man.
Yes.
We personal responsibility. So again, I feel horrible that they are behind on the mortgage. I hate that she's in this position. I hate that she has to share a child with this man and she has to balance all these other stressors going on in our lives. But at what point do we hold Brittany responsible for some of the things that have happened to her? And this
Very
mortgage is
true.
one. You're 50-50 on that mortgage. Y'all share the same paperwork, which means you have access to check what this looks like on your end.
And
You just
listen,
too late.
I
But now what? Now you're going to be double the stress that you have to catch up and make arrangements for how to get this right. Couldn't imagine.
would by no means say that like in like a way of like this is what happens when to say that like Brittany deserves any of this. Of
Dude,
course not. Of course not.
dude.
However, when you marry someone like Jax, I don't know how you envision your
Yeah.
life being with him when even the limited bit that we know Jax tells me at
Hmm.
the very least he's emotionally abusive and reactive,
Hmm.
impulsive, non-trustworthy. I think he, on top of being a narcissist, is probably a nymphomaniac. I
Mm.
think that Jax has an assortment of reasons to which you would not get close with him. And Brittany, in her fair right, I still remember she talked derogatory about Faith. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't, I don't want to say two birds of a feather, but what I do want to say is Brittany did excuse and ignore Jax because certain behaviors he did at the time just didn't impact her or she didn't find a problem with. And then when you see those same men, it's all and it's like not lost on me, right? Like white women rarely feel like it'll turn back on them.
Hmm.
Like it's somebody else. It's not me. And it's like
Yes.
it'll always be you. Like
Yep.
that's the thing. It's always coming for you as well. And your inability to see that is a lot of privilege. So I do
Yeah.
feel that about Brittany too. Like I'm like, you're a dumb bitch for putting your kid in this position. Like
Yeah.
you are. Like it's stupid to have someone like Jax around to rely on.
Hmm.
That's true in a
One of
loving way.
one of my favorite things to say is choices were made.
Hmm.
Every decision that you get to, at the end of every decision, you have to look back and say, okay, choices were made.
Hmm.
I made a lot of choices that got me into a bad position. Does that make me stupid or does that make me a bad person? Does that make me ignorant? I don't know. But you made choices that got you to where you are in this current. And she
Choices were made. I
choices
love
were
that.
made. She's made choices for the past 10 plus years
Hmm.
while dating Jax.
Right,
And
it
that
didn't just happen out of nowhere.
did not just
Poof.
happen out of nowhere.
No.
You made
Same with
choices,
Michelle and
you made
Jesse.
decisions. Yes. Yes. And this is the same sentiment that I have around Jesse and Michelle.
Hmm.
Michelle now is saying that Jesse is this horrible person and he's always been like this. And it's easy to get wrapped up in a cycle of abuse.
Absolutely.
But was he like this in the beginning? What choices could you have made differently that may have changed some of the decisions that happened? It just in Brittany and Jack's choices were made.
Did
She
you and like did Michelle realize the gravity? Like how did he talk about other women that weren't
Mhm,
you? What offensive things did he say about people that aren't you? You know what I
mhm,
mean? Like what does he need in a partner? That's what you talked about that earlier. Like are people
mhm.
really talking about these roles? Like I think that a lot of men have gotten very good at being deceptive, obviously. Like there is quite literally men who purposely want to date progressive women when they're not, you know what I mean? And they masquerade themselves. But a lot of times you can tell how someone feels about women, how they think you should show up, what your life would look like with them if you
Yeah,
ask them questions or if you
yeah,
pay attention.
yeah. At the end of this with Brittany and Jax, you made a choice not to check your mortgage. You made a choice
That's right.
to trust your husband, despite him being very untrustworthy in every other sector of your life.
Now, what I'll say is, not I hope, I hope justice is served. Like, let's say that the allegations that came forward about Jax, because there's allegations that he has sexually assaulted somebody who worked at his
Hmm.
bar. Let's say that's true. I hope he goes to jail. You
Yeah.
know, like I hope you go to jail, and then I hope also that your resources are obviously left in the hands of your advisor who pays all of your bills without you deciding whether or not you want to or not. And I hope that I I guess basically you you can't just be horrible and not have any consequences. So Jax's
Mhm.
are coming someday is what I'll say.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I have a hope for Brittany as she continues to navigate what this looks like with Jax going forward, that her focus is what is best for Cruz.
absolutely.
What is the best path forward for Cruz? And a part of that was checking that mortgage. A part of what is best for Cruz is making sure that y'all have a home and a roof over your head. Easier said than done. All the things that we've both spoken about are from outsider opinions and people that are not in those within those experiences, of course. So there's a lot of nuances that we don't know, and a lot of details that we aren't privy to. But again, based on what we do have access to and the editing that we do have, choices were made, and I want to see everyone make better choices for the rest of the season.
Well, if you need help making some of life's choices, now's a great time to remind you that Janae is a marriage and family therapist. I believe it's MFT. So
Hmm.
if you are in need of some workshops, if you're in need of some information, if you just want to be inspired, if you are having some issues deciding what type of therapy is best for you, you can check out her website, you can check out her socials, you can go to her TikTok page. All of these things, she has all of these resources to help us figure out therapy, even if she is not your therapist.
Hmm.
She still has resources and tips to help you. So let this be a reminder as we are making said choices. Let's make sure that we have support for those choices. And let's make sure that we're in a good headspace so that we can make better choices.
Yes.
I'll wrap the episode by asking you this, and I'm going to ask my listeners the same question. If you could see me interview one cast member from the Valley, who would you want me to chat with?
What a good question.
Yeah.
I actually think I would like for you to chat with Nia.
Okay.
I think if we want more from Nia as viewers of the show, she needs to get more interviews as well because we're going to get kind of that siloed view of what people want from her cast
Mm.
versus what the viewers want to hear more information about. So I think having a good like one-to-one conversation with Nia and maybe asking some of those harder questions will give the people what they have been looking for from her. So yeah, I would say Nia.
I love that because that would probably be my hardest interview to do. And
It
that's
would.
because like I have strong opinions about her husband who hasn't really shown that
Mhm.
many times on screen, and yet like I still have a feeling about
Mhm.
him, you know what I mean? So that would be a challenging but fun interview. And you're right, if we want to expect more from her, I that's part of why I love interviewing people, is we get that context that helps
Yeah.
add as we watch the show. Let me know in the comments who you guys think you'd like to talk to me, who you'd like to see me talk to. If you'd like to see me talk to Nia, comment Nia. You can now reply to things on Spotify. If you're watching us on YouTube,
Mhm.
leave a comment below. As stated, make sure you're following Janae. Give her her flowers for coming on the episode. We
Thank
recapped two
you.
podcast episodes about the Valley and two episodes. So I know we gabbed for, oh,
A
I-
while.
let's just say a while and abbreviate it. But I know we gabbed for a while, but we went over a lot of things. The next time we'll keep things a bit briefer. We'll try to do maybe like one episode, but
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about Love Island. We're going to be talking
I'm
about
so
Love Island USA the
I'm
next episode. Like,
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I want the cast bios to be out. Like, I want to read about them. Like, all we can see is look at the photos of the cast. I want to be able to read their bios. I want to get into it.
Well, I will say one thing about the cast,
Oh,
just to
good.
wrap this up. I think Love Island producers heard us when we said diversify the cast because this is a very good mix of cast members. And I'll even go on to say like there are no blondes
Thank God.
on this initial cast.
Hmm.
Now I'm looking forward to the first girl that they introduced to the villa to be a blonde.
Yes.
Go, bring it on. Um, yeah, I think they heard us. I think they said, okay, y'all want a little more color? Yes. I think people just wanted more balance and not for the black people or the brown people to be that one-off person on the show. So I'm loving the cast mix up, and now it makes me look forward to like, well, what blonde bombshell are you going to bring in? Because we know it's coming. So like now I'm kind of like, ooh, who else? What's the rest of the cast going to look like now?
I'm so excited. The one thing I'll say too is, and I hope it's not inappropriate for me to say, but I really do hope that the men that they casted also like women of color. Like, I pray
Yes.
to God that the men a part of this original cast aren't men who are waiting for a Kaler with
Yeah.
blonde hair and blue eyes to walk in. Like, I pray that they're truly like women of color, brown and black women. Like, I don't want them to give us diversity and to the not cast men who truly
Mhm.
value and have the preference for the women that they've casted. So I pray to God that they did that. The only person that we've heard is a problem is Austin and Ulysses' ass. Okay, everybody, thank you for listening to our episode. Like I said, next time we're going to talk about Love Island USA. Thank you for talking about the Valley with us. I want to hear all of your hot takes.
Also, what do you always say? I reserve the right to change my mind. So if somebody comes in
Yes.
here and says something convincing enough to change your mind, I'm open to changing my mind as well.
Everybody have a great rest of your day. Janae, tell everyone what your username is so they can follow you on socials.
Yeah, you can always search Janae Breon, JanaeBreahn. That's on everything, on Instagram, on TikTok. My name is not that on TikTok, but if you search Janae Breon, I come up. And then my website is also janaebreon.com. So everything's the same. Janae Breon, if you're in the state of Georgia and you're looking for a new therapist, I am accepting new clients virtually and in person.
And I will also be putting a link to her workbook that she has, some of her workshops that she does, her website. I'm going to put all of that below in the details. Make sure that you look around. As a quick reminder, I'm always trying to bring more people to donate to New Jersey's Perinatal Health and Equity Initiative. New Jersey does have a higher death rate for Black women in the country. New Jersey's Perinatal Health and Equity Initiative have services to try to bridge the gap, help Black mamas in New Jersey. Make sure you visit their website if you have the ability to donate. I'm going to have them listed below in the details. Please donate to them. They just recently had an upcoming event, so they will be putting one on again soon. They can always use the resources. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day. Follow me. Yeah, oh, that'll be the last thing.
Subscribe.
Follow, subscribe, like this video. I'm bad at the self promotion, but you guys should know that and give me love because of it and my anxiousness. Thank you and
Thanks,
good
Leah.
night. You did so good.